As a leader, you always have to be looking down the road. A leader has to keep his eyes up and looking out, to anticipate challenges, to shape the battlefield, to ensure that when the team arrives, they're successful. A leader has to establish a core set of values and principles that simply will not change, and then build a decision-making process on that bedrock. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the world's first self-sustaining, self-scaling, integrated development model to end extreme poverty. And the greatest lesson I have learned is that the best ideas in fighting poverty lie within those trapped in poverty themselves. You see, this business is about leaders. This is about people. And it's based on a fundamental discovery that I've made in the last 5 years in the bush. And that's this. When you first go to an area to work, instead of starting by asking what, start by focusing on who. So when I first got to Ethiopia, one of the things that we do when we first get to a project is we try to identify and vet the best leaders to work with. So you get folks to come, and these walks, these hikes are pretty arduous. They're all day long. But one of the guys I met in Ethiopia, his name was Masele. And as we were about halfway through, we were coming down the ridgeline on the other side, and we looked down and there was a group of farmers that were carrying a stretcher with someone wrapped in white on the stretcher. And so Masele looked down and saw him, and he basically bolted and took off running down there. And he said, oh, that's one of his farmers that they're trying to take to the clinic. They have to carry him there because he's sick. And he's dying. So I was kind of thinking about that all day. And we got all the way to the bottom, and we got into this tree, and everybody's exhausted. And then here I look up, and here comes Masele, who'd walked about twice as far as we had that day. He was exhausted. And he plopped down next to us under the shade tree, and I pulled out the bread and the water. So I gave it to him because I wanted to see what he would do. So Masele took the basket of bread and the water, and he basically passed it around his guys. And they all took bread out, and when it got back to him, there was a few crumbs left, and he kind of ate those crumbs. He hadn't eaten all day. He did not care. What he cared about was his community. He cared about making sure that whatever initiatives that I was bringing were going to be able to come here, and that he was going to be able to help his people. You know, servant leadership is about leading by example. It's about getting in the trenches with your people, getting dirt under your fingernails, and demonstrating to your team that when the chips are down and your team is under fire, the relationships and the trust that you build will enable you to come together, hunker down, and fight through to victory.
It's a human vision, legacy we want to leave behind us.